James Ernest of The Grueling Truth, here with author Mark Tullius, author of the book Unlocking the Cage. So, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, thanks for having me on, James. I was inspired to write the book because I was a former fighter that could never answer the question why I was doing it. I wasn't successful at fighting. I had always avoided confrontation. I was a bodyguard. I was a guy that was always breaking up fights. So after I graduated from college and found myself entering, at the time it was called No Holds Barred, when I was finding myself fighting, I could never figure out why I was doing it. And I just kind of wrote it off. I didn't really spend that much time thinking about it. But then time went on, and I was 6 years ago, I was 39 years old. And I just realized if I was ever going to answer that question of why, why I competed, why these other guys are competing, I needed to do the project. So that was the main reason. And then I also wanted to know because my daughter, at the time she was 3 years old, I was a stay-at-home dad. She was beginning to try to put me in triangle chokes. She enjoyed punching and kicking. And it was all cute. I thought it was all good, but it did raise the concerns like, okay, is she going to, if I expose her to this kind of stuff, is she going to fight like I did? Is she going to go down that same path? And is that something that I would, at the time, I was absolutely I was afraid of that. I would not want that to happen. So that was another reason why I started going around the country and talking to fighters and looking at, all these different things.
So, did she end up continuing with it?
Yes, she did, and that's kind of what I took away. One of the most important lessons I learned from this project was how wonderful martial arts can be. Because besides talking with the fighters, I was also talking with parents. I was sitting in on kids' classes, taking pictures, talking with coaches like Mike Winklejohn, he has an awesome kids program. I would talk to the kids themselves, and I was just able to see that it was amazing what these kids were getting from, whether it was MMA practice or it was strictly jiu-jitsu. They were getting so much from it. So by the time I was finished, I knew that I wanted to, for sure, I was going to put her into martial arts. And luckily, she liked jiu-jitsu. She currently trains. She's been training for 2 or 3 years, and she just won a gold medal, getting 2 submissions. And it was awesome to see. I've never seen her so proud of herself. And that's at 9 years old. So, yeah, the benefits of her doing it are awesome. And I don't think exposing her to jiu-jitsu and she's even going to be starting to take some combat jiu-jitsu type stuff. I don't think that is going to make an individual fight and want to do MMA. Perhaps it will, but I would much rather give her all the benefits of the martial arts. I think it's priceless. I've had so many fighters tell me that too. They're like, I wish I had taken martial arts at a younger age, because not because they would be a better fighter, which they would, but because they knew it would have helped them out so much as a person and their development.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the things. Same thing, when you meet so many fighters, because I've worked with a couple MMA organizations, the respect level that those people show, the fitness, the responsibility, the confidence and self-esteem those people have, it really is. It helps build young people.
Yeah, most definitely. And I've also had the pleasure of seeing how much it affects, someone like myself. I pretty much started over. So I went from being, 40 years out of shape into, I hadn't been around the martial arts at all, into having to repeat everything. I threw away my blue belt. I went back to a white belt. I was able to see my own development. But then even my wife, she just started training because she was watching my daughter train and all these other mothers at our gym. And the changes with her were amazing as well. So it's definitely something that people can take up at any age. It doesn't necessarily full MMA, but if it's a modified thing like jiu-jitsu or another art, I highly recommend it for all levels.
Exactly. What were some of the more interesting fighters that you met? The better stories, the interesting.
That was probably the hardest part about writing the book, was figuring out who I could include. Because I think it was 340 fighters that I actually interviewed on tape. But sometimes, I decided to write the book chronologically, and there were some amazing stories that just didn't make it in there. Like Jeremy Stevens, I love watching him fight. And we had a great conversation while he was running on the treadmill, and we had, talked for 25, 30 minutes. But that didn't make it on there. And I was at Josh Koscheck's house for a whole afternoon, and we had such an awesome interview. But by the end of it, we decided, that was more like a personal thing for me to hear and for him to tell me. And so that wasn't in there as well. But and because I talked with so many different types of fighters, one of my favorites was Dominic Cruz. I think I got to see a side of him that that I didn't know about before. So I talked with him and Michael Chandler at Alliance MMA, and I got to see how champions, why they're champions, and their kind of mindset. But then it was also really interesting to see the opposite end. I interviewed one fighter, I think he was 3-19. And it's like, okay, why is this guy doing it? There were certain stories that were incredibly inspiring, guys that have overcome so much. Not too far from you in Missouri, Destruction MMA, Alex White. He's a UFC fighter. He's going to be fighting against James Krause coming up here pretty soon. But his interview was so sad because this kid had just been so poor. He was working at McDonald's. He would fight. One of the things he looked forward to was betting his friends for Big Macs. Like if he got a knockout, he would get a free Big Mac or something else. And he just came from so little, had a really bad upbringing, was really bullied. But then I believe it was his first UFC fight. He got a fight of the night bonus, I think.
Oh, wow.
So,
nice.
and it's just life-changing. So it's wonderful to see that kind of stuff happen. On the other hand, I have other friends that I've watched them. I've heard their stories. I hear how much they want this, how they work so hard. They've spent so much of their life trying to get to the UFC, and then they get there, and then they have, one or two really tough fights that they weren't supposed to win, and then they're cut from the organization, and then so that's also that's the downside. But yeah, there were so many powerful interviews. It's kind of hard to pinpoint one, but each one, it was a tough thing because I spent so many days on the road and away from my daughter. I've been taking care of her for 3 years. I was the stay-at-home dad. But it was these interviews that got me inspired and motivated. Like every day I would want to go to the next gym. I don't mind driving 5 hours to the next state because I know I'm going to talk with some more, people that are going to get me very motivated and get me inspired. And I don't know if it was necessarily that they were fighters, but they were people that were sharing their story with me. They were sharing, I was really looking at where they were coming from. I was trying to understand who they were as a person, and that's what hopefully I was able to show with some of the videos. Just the kind of people they really are.
Exactly. That's one of the things that amazes me is just how close-knit of a community MMA is.
Yeah, I had one of the things that helped the most was lots of the trips on my first trip I had 17 days, and I didn't have many places lined up, but one gym would recommend another gym, and one fighter would tell me, definitely go talk to this guy, and these guys would love to have you, and these are the kinds of places that you're looking for. And so when I did that, it was amazing. And so I never had to really worry about it. Some trips I wouldn't plan anything at all, and I would just be like, okay, I'm going to be in these states at these times. I'm going to start at this school, and then we're just going to see where this thing takes me. And it was because everyone was so cool and they, very close knit. It just worked out great.
So what's your current project?
I just actually today I am finishing up my next novel. I have I would say I'm mainly a fiction writer. That's my passion. I write horror, science fiction, suspense. That's what I love doing. So I just finished book one of a 5-book series, and then I'm about to jump into a fantasy novel, a series as well. And some other Try Not to Die short horror stories that I'm working on with some fighters. Ken Lasik, who fought in the UFC, and Steve Montgomery, who fought in the UFC, and some other fighters that I met through Unlocking a Cage. I'm actually working with them on these horror novellas. So I have kind of a lot going on. I don't know if I am going to jump back into nonfiction. I don't think I'm going to do it anytime soon. Originally, I thought I was going to do something like Unlocking a Cage, but for jiu-jitsu, because that is my passion now. But I recently had a neck injury that is preventing me from training, and so if I can't train, I don't think I want to spend that amount of time going around and interviewing guys and that sort of thing. So I think for now I'm going to be sticking with fiction for a while. And although fight related, I do have a friend that is hoping to do a poetry book based using all fighters, fighters from Unlocking the Cage. In Unlocking the Cage, my former opponent, Ken Lasik, we include a poem from him. He used to write poetry before and after, not every, it would either be before or after. Every fight he would write some poetry, and he shared one of his poems with me for the book. And so I think that probably will be the next nonfiction project, is reaching out to these different fighters and giving them another way to express themselves, because so many of them are truly artists. And they say that is one of the reasons why they love to fight, because they're able to express themselves in a way, there's no other avenue for them to express themselves like that. So giving them the poetry, giving them the writing, I think it's just another way to tap into that, the artistic side of them.
Tell us a little bit about the Try Not to Die series. That sounds really interesting.
You know what? I'm excited about it. It originally started because I loved Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid, where every couple pages you would get to choose your path. You would have to choose one of 3 things, and they would take you to different stories, different endings. In my series, there is only one correct path with all those choices, and all the wrong choices you die or face a terrible ending. And I realized that I wanted to do it with friends or different individuals, because I believe everyone. That's one of the things the martial arts taught me too. I was like, I can learn something from anyone. It doesn't matter if it's on the mat or if it's in an interview. If I go in there with that kind of attitude, I am going to get something from this individual. My novel, Brightside, I'm writing a Try Not to Die in that world, but the character is a 16-year-old female. And I could probably do a decent job doing that, but I was like, well, why don't I bring in one of my female friends who will be able to really tell me what it's like to be, a 15 or 16-year-old girl. And so by doing that, by bringing in these different individuals, it makes my job a lot easier, and it's a lot fun, and I think it's going to make it a lot better. So I have probably about 12 different ones in the works. I believe Steve Montgomery, his is Try Not to Die in Dixie. That's one of the ones that's well on its way and will probably be out next year. And Tim's is Try Not to Die on Hard Road, or Try Not to Die Hard Road, something like that. Mm-hmm. But his is going to be excellent. And again, it was nice for me to be able to, these guys all gave me so much, so it's kind of cool. I feel good about being able to inspire them to really, go for it and put it out there. I think a lot of people doubt themselves. If you've never done anything before, if you've never written a book before, it may seem like it's impossible. But I'm just showing them, like, no, all we're going to do is we're just going to talk, and we're going to talk about this story, and we're going to figure it out, and before you know it, it'll be done. And having that type of thinking, which I think is something from martial arts, it's like if you put in the time, you will accomplish your goals. And so but yeah, I think the Try Not to Dies are going to be a lot of fun. We also have one, Try Not to Die at Death Fest. That's another one. It's a guy's trip to a heavy metal concert and all the terrible stuff that happens there. So it's generally stuff that I'm interested in, or that the other co-author is really passionate about. But because of that, I think it should be a fun series. Sort of like maybe the next Goosebumps. We'll see what happens with it.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say that does sound really interesting and really exciting. So tell us, where is the best spots to learn about your books and you as an author? On social media, that kind of thing.
Okay. Probably the best. Well, everything is linked to my website, which is marktullius.com. It's Tullius. You guys could find me on Amazon. All my books are on there. And I have 2 podcasts right now. I have Unlocking, and I have Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. You can find those on iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere podcasts are played. On the Vicious Whispers, I go a little bit more into writing and why I do it, and a little bit more on the process and sharing short stories and audiobooks. And with Unlocking, I talk with fighters, I talk with friends. It's a little bit more laid back and going a little bit more personal on that one. So yeah, if anyone wants to hear more, check out one of those podcasts or find my books on Amazon. Unlocking the Cage is out now on Kindle, and the hardcover will be out December 5th.
Excellent. Sounds great. We're definitely glad we had you on the show, and as you do the other books, definitely feel free to touch back with us, because we want our fans to learn more about these exciting opportunities.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Excellent. Have a great day, Mark.